Welcome back to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Obi-Wan Kenobi Chapter 3. What an episode! This moment made me jump. I can't wait to talk about that, but first let's get started on the Easter eggs. The episode opens with Obi-Wan still praying to Qui Gon, waiting for his master to speak to him. Now you remember that up until this point in history, it was not normal for a Jedi to survive after death and speak to the living. Qui Gon was able to do this because he had a strong connection with the living force. That's the part of the force that's generated by all living things. Now in Revenge of the Sith, through meditation, Yoda was able to hear Qui Gon's voice, which is why he tells Obi-Wan that he'll teach him how he can speak to his former master.
How to commune with him, I will teach you.
But Obi-Wan hasn't quite mastered this technique yet, probably because he is not at peace with himself and he is not at balance. Remember, Rey had a similar problem in The Rise of Skywalker.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sorry, wrong clip. I meant this.
Starting to think it isn't possible to hear the voices of the Jedi who came before.
Instead of hearing Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan can only hear the voice of Reva revealing that Anakin is alive, and then voices from his past. This quote,
Only pain will you find.
is Yoda when he warned Obi-Wan not to look at the records of Order 66 in Revenge of the Sith.
If into the security recordings you go, only pain will you find.
That's the moment when he first saw that Anakin killed the Jedi. And then he hears Qui-Gon's dying words.
Obi-Wan, promise me you will train the boy.
And finally, his final confrontation with Anakin.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Then we cut to Vader in Bacta, like we first saw in Rogue One, being reassembled. Now notice his suit is just a bit different from what we may be used to. This actually matches what he wore in A New Hope. The forehead of the helmet is a bit bigger, the eyes are a little smaller, and they also have red lenses. Now there was a nod to these original red lenses in Revenge of the Sith when he first puts on the helmet. This is Vader's palace on Mustafar. Now this is, of course, where Obi-Wan and Anakin dueled and Vader was very badly burned.
I'm still alive, only I'm very badly burned.
But Mustafar is also the location of a strong dark side nexus, so Vader ordered his palace to be built there. He commissioned a Sith architect to design this structure as a way to harness dark side energy, which he then used to enter the realm of the dead and speak to Padme. But once he saw her, she didn't recognize him because he was so overcome with the dark side energy. Now we later saw more of the palace in Rogue One, but now we get to see his throne room, and James Earl Jones returns to voice Vader.
Kenobi is all that matters now.
You know, the fall of Anakin Skywalker is the great tragedy of Star Wars, and not just because it led to the rise of the Emperor in the Galactic Civil War. No, it also robbed Anakin of that luscious head of hair of his, and all that time in the Bacta tank couldn't regrow any of Vader's hair except his eyebrows. Someone really should have told Lord Vader that the best way to prevent hair loss is to start when you still have hair left. And that is why I use Keeps. They're the sponsor of this video. There's a history of hair loss in my family, so when my hair started to thin, I didn't waste any time. Treatments can take up to 4 to 6 months or more to see results, so it is important that you act fast, and you have to start early and stick with it. So believe me, if your hair's starting to thin, do not put this off. Start using Keeps now. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you will save. It's even proven to work on an Inquisitor scalp. Hundreds of thousands of men trust Keeps for their hair loss prevention medication, and they have more 5-star reviews than any of their competitors. So if you're noticing that you're losing your hair, do something about it. For a limited time, go to keeps.com/screencrush or click the link in the description to get 50% off your first order. Now back to the Easter eggs. Back on the ship, Obi-Wan says,
It's a trade route, Leia. I'm not in control of it.
Now, what he means by that is there are all these hyperspace lanes throughout the galaxy. These are the safe pathways through subspace where you won't accidentally materialize into a sun or something, which is why trade routes were able to be taxed in the opening crawl of The Phantom Menace. When Leia asks Ben to use the Force, he says,
That's not how it works.
which I'm sure made us all think of this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
No, I mean this.
That's not how the Force works.
His explanation of the Force was very touching.
How does it feel when you turn on the light?
I feel safe.
Yes, it feels like that.
And I thought it was sweet that he explains the Force to Leia for the first time, just like he was able to explain it to Luke.
surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
Obi-Wan fixes the droid Lola, which many of you pointed out the droid looks very similar to the saucer aliens in the movie Batteries Not Included. And those aliens were created by Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's VFX company. Adult Apostate on Twitter also mentions the way Leia's braid falls makes her look like the Padawan that she would never get to properly be. When they sneak off the ship, we can see the Imperial crest on these crates. Now, this is very similar to the Republic crest we saw in the prequels, except that Palpatine had two pillars taken away, one of them representing the Jedi and the other one was symbolic of your mom. When they land, there is an R5 astromech model droid right here. And boy, Obi-Wan is always smuggling himself onto and off of something, isn't he? Then we get to the Inquisitor ship landing at Fortress Inquisitorius on Nurn. This headquarters of the Inquisitors was previously seen in Jedi Fallen Order and the Darth Vader comics. Now notice how the shuttle, the fortress, and Vader's palace all have twin towers at the top. This is to represent the Sith rule of two, that there can only ever be one master and one apprentice. Any more than that and the Sith start killing each other. The Sith power structure works like a pyramid, with Palpatine on top and the Inquisitors at the bottom. This is also why the shape of a Sith holocron is also a pyramid. Also, notice that the Inquisitor theme John Williams composed sounds a little bit like his famous Imperial March. Which is cool because all through this series he is using pieces that sound a little bit like his original themes, but like they're not quite fully formed yet. Then Reva has to walk through what I can only assume is a dark side detector to enter this little throne room where she wants to sit in the Grand Inquisitor's chair, which again has two spikes on it. Now we're not even sure if the Grand Inquisitor is really dead because we saw a Grand Inquisitor that looks just like him appear in Rebels, which takes place a few years after this show. And I mean look, Fennec Shand shrugged off a gut shot wound in The Mandalorian, so we'll see. I have a feeling this Inquisitor is going to be back by the end of the season, all healed up. They hitch a ride with a seemingly friendly trucker who's just happy to have some darn order in the galaxy, and that trucker is actually voiced by Zach Braff.
They pay their way, listen to the Empire.
And man, Leia is a great liar.
He brought me here to see the place where he met my mother.
She comes up with the names Luma and Orden for their cover. Now, a Luma is actually a glow rod used for mining. Very fitting, considering they're stuck on Mapuzo, a mining world. And Orden, the name she gives Ben, could be a play on mining ore. You can see how she became a senator when she was 17. Then Obi-Wan talks about Padme without talking about Padme.
Sometimes when I look at Luma, I see her mother's face.
And Leia, who is Force sensitive and very intuitive about people's emotions, picks up on this.
You knew her, my real mother.
Now, I was surprised to hear Obi-Wan talk wistfully about his original family.
Baby.
Yes, I think I had a brother.
Now, I'm sure if he really wanted to, he could have visited them after he was trained, but the Jedi Code forbids any attachment. Knowing that Ben had this longing to see his mother is really sad, but it shows his dedication to the Jedi Code, much like how he pushed aside his feelings for Duchess Satine.
Had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
Now, he does say that he had a brother, which opens the door for more Kenobis running around the saga. But this might also be a nod to the original Star Wars novelization where his brother was Owen Lars. The way Obi-Wan speaks of his mother as flashes or images
Flashes, really. My mother's shawl.
is also very much like how Leia spoke of her mother.
Do you remember your mother? Your real mother?
Just images, really. Feelings.
It makes me even think that eventually in the series, maybe Obi-Wan will share visions of Padme with Leia through the Force. That way, her quote in Return of the Jedi makes a little bit more sense. Then they are scanned by an Imperial probe droid like we first saw in The Empire Strikes Back, and like every other machine in Star Wars, it's disabled when you shoot it in the eye. And of course, shooting gates in Star Wars always opens or closes them exactly how you need. Then we meet Indira Varma's Tala. You might remember her as Ilaria Sand in Game of Thrones. So she is running a Jedi safety escape route, like a science fiction parallel to the real-life Underground Railroad. The Inquisitors are able to track down the ship pretty easily, and they say that it's on a planet mining Ventrium. That's a mineral that was first mentioned in the game Star Wars Galaxies. And Reva definitely has some hidden connection to Vader, right? We theorized about what that could be in this video. Tala takes them into a droid parts storage area where we can see the legs of protocol droids like C-3PO hanging up here on the wall. Tweeting Zhao on Twitter also pointed out these cool battle droid parts on the wall, kind of like the show itself. It's forging together these two trilogies. This loader droid, Ned B, has a head that is very much like a Separatist tactical droid from the Clone Wars animated series. Oh, and you know this line?
He's just a loader. They don't allow them to communicate.
But what if he has something to say?
Like, oh, now you're into droid rights, Leia? Your husband's ship is piloted by the consciousness of a droid that is essentially cursed to live inside the walls of the ship. No big deal.
What?
I guess she was more into like droid social justice when she was a little kid, then grew out of it once she entered politics. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this safe house is very much like the Underground Railroad. This was a network of routes and safe houses that allowed people to escape from slavery from the South, and after 1850, allowed people to escape from slavery to Canada. This Jedi network is called the Path, and this could be a reference to the Path of the Jedi, or to the Paths created by March and Rowe in the High Republic series. See, the Paths are a network of secret hyperspace routes that only March and Rowe space pirates can access. Maybe the Jedi have accessed this secret network and use it to escape from the Empire. This also makes me wonder if this Path network might later be repurposed to allow several Rebel cells to communicate with one another. In the show Rebels, it's revealed that Ahsoka Tano was secretly helping organize all these early Rebel cells. Maybe she also escaped through the Path and later expanded the Path to build the rebellion. Tala says the Jedi hide on Jabim, a planet first mentioned in the Force Awakens role-playing game and then later in the Star Wars Adventure comic book. And it was also mentioned here.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
On the wall, Reva later finds a chalk drawing of the Jedi Order symbol, and there are a ton of Arabesh letters written on the wall by all the Jedi passing through. For instance, we can also see the names Jen Altus, Valen Halcyon, and Raganda Ismarin, all of whom appeared in the non-canon book Children of the Jedi. Welcome to the Star Wars canon, characters. There's also a full quote from Quinlan Vos that reads, "Only when the eyes are closed can you see." And Will Watkins on Twitter pointed out that seeing with your eyes closed is a motif that's repeated in Star Wars, with Kanan in Rebels, and like when Luke switches off his targeting computer in A New Hope.
Your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them.
Tala mentions that the Empire is hunting Force-sensitive children, and no one knows what happens to them. This seems ominous, like they're killing kids, but it's actually worse than that. The Emperor is actually building a kind of dark Jedi Order. He recruits children to create future Sith Inquisitors. Reva is probably one of these recruits, assuming this kid in the opening scene of the series is actually her. Darth Sidious has actually hunted Force-sensitive children before. There was a Clone Wars episode where he hired Cad Bane to steal a holocron of Force-sensitive Jedi, and he even snagged himself a Force-sensitive baby. The Empire kidnapped a Force-sensitive child in Rebels, and finally, Ezra posed as an Imperial cadet recruited by the Inquisitors to learn how they were recruiting children. The Empire is also chasing a holocron that contains the names of Jedi children in the game Fallen Order and in the Darth Vader comic books. But the real fun reveal was this.
Quinlan was here.
He is referring to Quinlan Vos, a badass Jedi from the Clone Wars series. He was originally going to have a long arc in the show with Asajj Ventress, and that was all planned out and in pre-production before the Clone Wars series was originally canceled by Disney when they bought Lucasfilm. But that story was adapted into the novel Dark Disciple. Basically, Quinlan ends up falling for Dooku's former apprentice Asajj Ventress, but then Dooku briefly seduces Quinlan Vos to the dark side, and Ventress wins him back to the light. It's a great story, and it's cool to know that we will see Quinlan Vos in the future. Ben can feel the dark side presence of Vader just like Vader could feel his presence in A New Hope.
I sense something, a presence I've not felt since...
And you know what's weird? When Vader was going through this village force-choking people, I really felt like this was Anakin in a suit, not like it was Darth Vader. Like it was Anakin from the prequels and not Vader from the original trilogy. Any of the rest of you feel that way? It's kind of strange. Let me know down in the comments. Vader is torturing people to draw out Obi-Wan. This is a tactic he would later employ in The Empire Strikes Back, torturing Han to send Luke visions of his friends through the Force.
Han? Leia!
Then we get a rematch where Vader is just so much more powerful than Obi-Wan. He takes his former master to class. Now notice how Obi-Wan seems surprised at how powerful Anakin is, like he could never be a match for him now. Now when the series is over, it's going to shed a lot of new light on their duel in A New Hope. There's a reason why Kenobi knew that he couldn't defeat Vader physically, but by then he would have perfected speaking to Qui Gon's Force Ghost, which is why he says,
"If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine."
Banjo Wookie on Twitter points out that in this duel there were subtle nods to the original movies. Obi-Wan slows down when he sees Vader in his path, like in A New Hope, striking from off-screen then getting distracted with steam, like in Empire Strikes Back. And the quick head turn here seems lifted from Return of the Jedi. Vader ignites the Ventrium on the ground so he can force drag Obi-Wan through the flames, perfectly mirroring how he was consumed by lava on Mustafar.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Whitey Oz1 on Twitter pointed out that this quote,
"I am what you made me,"
is actually a mix of James Earl Jones and Hayden Christensen speaking, similar to in Star Wars Rebels when they mixed the voice of James Earl Jones and Anakin voice actor Matt Lanter.
Ahsoka.
Now, at the end, Tala ignites the flames to cover Obi-Wan's escape, and Vader just stands there, which is weird, because one, he can force jump kind of high, and two, you would think that, like, if nothing else, Vader would insist that his new suit would be completely 100% fireproof. This is a guy who never wants to go near an open flame again. Well, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, hit the bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.